All right, it's time for a little math. Back in the 1980s, Donald Trump used to say that his penthouse luxury apartment in Trump Tower in New York City was 30,000 square feet. He even upped it to Forbes once, claiming that it was a sprawling 33,000 square feet. But public records show that that apartment is 10,996 square feet. When it comes to how many rooms make up that penthouse apartment, Thomas Wells, a former Trump real estate lawyer, once noticed that different publications had wildly different counts of the number of rooms. Shouldn't be that hard to figure out how many rooms there are in your house. Wells said in the 1980s, some press reports had Trump living in an apartment with 8 rooms. Some said 16, maybe 20, or even 30. So Wells asked Trump how many rooms were actually in his apartment. According to Wells, Trump said, quote, however many they will print. Math doesn't seem to be Donald Trump's strong suit. Let's start with his calculation of percentages, particularly when it comes to how much he claims to have reduced prescription drug prices. This is what he said he was going to do to drug prices last year.
Now drug prices are going to be going down 100%, 400%, 600%, 1,000% in some cases.
1,000% in some cases. And here's how he tried to justify his calculations during a recent event.
I took a lot of heat and say 500, 600, but we also say sometimes 50%, 60%, different kind of calculation, 70, 80, and 90%, and people understand that better. But there are two ways of calculating it. But either way, it doesn't make any difference, whether it's 60, 70, or 80%. Nobody's ever heard of it. But it's also 500, 600, 700, depending on the way you want to look at it, so the way you word the calculation.
The way you word the calculation. What he's saying, I think, or at least he's trying to say, is that his administration has lowered drug prices by 500, 600, or even 700%, as you heard earlier, maybe even 1,000%, but sometimes it's 50% or 60%. So let's do a little math. If something is 100% off, it is free. It is being given away. No money is exchanging hands at all. Reducing drug prices, or any prices really, by more than 100% is, generally speaking, mathematically impossible. If you reduce the price of anything by more than 100%, that means when you go to buy that thing, you get the thing and you get money back. There is no alternative calculation that helps make sense of any of this. It's the kind of exaggeration that Trump, the businessman and publicity hog, has been using for decades to attract attention. But now not only is the president doing this, but a slew of underlings who are willing to dignify his arithmetical nonsense are offering similar explanations.
Well, if the drug was $100 and it raised the price to $600, that would be a 600% rise. Well, if it drops from 600 to 100, that's a 600% savings.
Now, if he were in middle school, RFK Jr. might get partial credit for showing his work, but he would fail the class because his calculations and indeed his entire conceptualization are all wrong. Let's do a quick math lesson here. If the price of something goes from $100 to $600, it's an increase of $500. Use that as the denominator. It is an increase of 500%, not 600%, as RFK Jr. says. Now, if you take the 500%, you divide 500 by 600, the increase by the final price, you get 0.833. Multiply that by 100, it's an 83% savings, which means if a price drops from $600 to $100, it's an 83% discount, which is certainly something. But it's not 400%, 500%, 600%, or 1,000%. And no, you can't use those things interchangeably. Trump and RFK Jr., by the way, are not the only ones engaging in bad math. It's caught on with other top government officials, too. In this case, what you're about to hear, not only is the math wrong, but the person doing the mathing is referring to himself in the third person.
This FBI director has been on the job twice as many days as every director before me. What that means is I've taken half as many days off as those before me. What that means is I've taken a third less vacation than those before me.
None of those things are connected. Setting aside the fact that that, too, is mathematical nonsense, this might be a good time to point out that Kash Patel has been on the job as FBI director for 518 days. J. Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI for 17,524 days. There's sure to be a spirited debate around which FBI director was more interesting in his exploits, but generally, if I were Kash Patel, I'd stay away from the how hard I work comparisons. But even that is all besides the point. This administration simply does not use real numbers to support its political stances. It throws numbers and percentages and fractions around to manipulate how you should feel about the job that it's doing or about a particular issue. And the numbers, if they're inconvenient, they just ignore them altogether.
Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear bomb.
I'm going to give you that opportunity.
I would simply ask you what the. You're playing gotcha questions
sir,
about domestic things. I'm not.
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased
Why
cost
won't you
of gas
answer what
and
it costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb?
I give you that, sir. But let me.
What would it cost? What would you pay to ensure Iran doesn't get a nuclear bomb? What would you pay?
I reclaim my time. Do you not know? You had no one do the analysis of what the increased cost of gas and food on the American people are going to be?
What is the cost of Iran holding that straight at issue with nuclear weapons?
It's $631 billion, which means it's an increase of $5,000 a year for American households. You deal with vague platitudes. I'm asking you about numbers. Like, you don't know what gas costs. You don't know what food costs. You don't know what the operation costs. You know, I get sound bites, but how about numbers?